The Siege of Arcturus Station. The morning shift at Arcturus Research Station began like any other in the past 3 years. Dr. Elena Vasquez walked through the observation deck's transparent aluminum corridors, her coffee mug steaming in the recycled air, as she watched the binary stars of the Arcturus system paint the void in brilliant orange and gold. The station housed nearly 15,000 souls from 12 different species, all united in their pursuit of knowledge about the mysterious energy phenomena that occurred naturally in this remote corner of the galaxy. Elena paused at her favorite viewing spot, where the station's rotating sections offered a perfect view of the research arrays. Massive sensor dishes pointed toward the cosmic anomalies that had drawn scientists from across known space. The Altarians had contributed their expertise in quantum mechanics, while the crystalline Vorthak had provided computational power beyond anything other species could imagine. Even the normally reclusive Etherians had sent their best minds to study the strange energy patterns that seemed to defy conventional physics. The peaceful morning was shattered by an emergency klaxon that echoed through every section of the station. Elena nearly dropped her coffee as the lights shifted to the amber warning configuration. Her communication device crackled to life with Ambassador Thektar's distinctive voice, his usually calm Altarian tones now edged with barely controlled fear. All station personnel report to emergency stations immediately. This is not a drill. We have multiple hostile contacts approaching the system. Elena ran toward the nearest lift, her mind racing through the possibilities. Pirates rarely ventured this far from major shipping lanes, and the station's research had no military applications that she knew of. As the lift carried her toward the command center, she passed windows showing families of different species gathering in confusion. Young Vorthak crystals dimmed with anxiety, while their parents' geometric forms flickered with protective energy patterns. Etherian children, their translucent bodies shimmering with nervous light, clung to their elders as evacuation procedures echoed through the corridors. The command center was chaos when Elena arrived. Ambassador Thektar stood at the central holographic display, his 4 arms working frantically across multiple control surfaces. His normally pristine robes were disheveled, and his large compound eyes reflected the red warning lights. The tactical display showed what had caused the panic. 412 contact signatures approaching from hyperspace, their energy readings indicating massive military vessels. "Ambassador, what's the situation?" Elena asked, joining the crowd of senior staff members around the display. Thektar's translation implant conveyed his words with mechanical precision, but Elena could hear the fear in his native tongue underneath. Long-range sensors have identified a Zephyrian hegemony battle fleet. They're demanding immediate surrender of the station and all research data. Elena felt her blood run cold. The Zephyrian hegemony was notorious throughout the galaxy for their aggressive expansion and complete disregard for civilian casualties. They were a militaristic society that viewed scientific cooperation between species as weakness and had been expanding their territory through conquest for over 2 centuries. "What are our defensive capabilities?" asked Dr. Zekhan, the Vorthak computational specialist, whose crystalline form was now pulsing with agitated light patterns. "Minimal," Thektar replied grimly. "We have standard deflector shields and 6 automated defense turrets designed to handle asteroids and debris. Against a hegemony battle fleet, they're essentially useless." The tactical display updated as the enemy fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Elena watched in horrified fascination as the sensor data revealed the true scope of what they faced. The Zephyrian ships were massive, angular vessels bristling with weapon systems. Each one was easily 10 times larger than Arcturus Station, and their formation spoke of military precision and overwhelming force. Commander Vexlov's transmission arrived exactly 1 hour after the fleet's emergence from hyperspace. His image appeared on the main screen, showing the typical Zephyrian appearance. Reptilian features with scales that shifted between deep purple and black, 4 arms ending in clawed hands, and eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. His uniform was adorned with conquest medals, each one representing a world that had fallen to his forces. "Attention inhabitants of the illegal research facility. His voice was a harsh rasp that the translation system struggled to convert into understandable speech. You are operating in space claimed by the Zephyrian hegemony under ancient rites of conquest. Your presence here violates our territorial sovereignty and constitutes an act of war against our people. Ambassador Thektar stepped forward, his diplomatic training taking over despite the obvious hopelessness of the situation. Commander, this is Ambassador Thektar of the Galactic Research Consortium. Arcturus Station is a peaceful scientific facility operating under proper international agreements. We have families and children aboard, including citizens from dozens of member species. Vexlov's laughter was like breaking glass. Your diplomatic immunities mean nothing here, alien. This system belongs to the hegemony, and you are trespassers. You have exactly 12 hours to prepare for either unconditional surrender or total annihilation. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, leaving behind only the hum of life support systems and the quiet sobbing of terrified families. Alina looked around the command center at faces representing a dozen different species, all united now in their fear and desperation. The Etherian engineer, Dr. Philanax, was already working to boost the station's shield generators, but everyone knew it was a futile gesture. The crystalline Vorthak were running probability calculations on their organic computers, and the results were painting themselves across their forms in patterns of deep blue despair. We need to send distress calls, Alina said, her voice cutting through the despair. Someone has to know what's happening here. Already transmitting on all emergency frequencies, replied Lieutenant Catel, a young Altarian communications officer. But the nearest Galactic Defense Force ships are weeks away at maximum hyperspace velocity. Even if they responded immediately, they couldn't arrive in time. As the hours passed, the situation became increasingly desperate. The Zephyrian fleet moved into attack formation, their massive ships taking positions that would allow them to destroy the station from multiple angles simultaneously. Their weapons systems powered up with ominous energy readings that made the station's sensors scream warnings about impending bombardment. Elena found herself in the station's main plaza, where thousands of beings from different worlds had gathered to face their final hours together. She watched an elderly Vorthak crystal singer sharing harmonious melodies with frightened children, while Etherian healers used their natural abilities to provide comfort to those overwhelmed by fear. Ambassador Thektar moved through the crowd, his diplomatic bearing never wavering as he offered words of encouragement to families who had lost all hope. The station's defensive systems activated with pathetic results. 6 automated turrets rose from hidden positions on the station's hull, their targeting systems locking onto the nearest Zephyrian vessels. The energy weapons fired in perfect synchronization, their beams lancing out toward the enemy fleet. The attack struck the lead ship shields and vanished without trace, like raindrops hitting an ocean. Commander Vexlov's final transmission arrived with 3 hours remaining on his deadline. His scaled face filled the screens throughout the station, his expression showing the satisfaction of a predator about to feed. Your time has nearly expired, aliens. My fleet is in position to reduce your pathetic outpost of atoms. Any last words before we demonstrate the price of defying the hegemony? Elena stepped forward before Ambassador Thektar could respond. Something inside her, some purely human stubbornness, refused to let them die in silence. Commander, you're about to murder 15,000 innocent beings whose only crime was seeking knowledge. History will remember you as a butcher and a coward who killed defenseless civilians. Vexlov's eyes blazed with fury. Your primitive species barely deserves acknowledgement, human. But I will ensure your deaths are particularly slow as payment for your insolence. The transmission ended, and Elena felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon her. She had probably made their final moments worse with her defiance, but she couldn't regret speaking truth to power. Around her, beings of different species reached out to comfort each other, creating a tapestry of cooperation and compassion that the Zephyrians would never understand. With 2 hours remaining, something impossible happened. The station's long-range sensors detected a massive energy signature approaching from the outer system. Space itself began to ripple and distort, like reality was being torn apart at the quantum level. Strange harmonics filled the communication channels, a sound like singing crystals and distant thunder that made everyone stop and listen. "What is that?" whispered Dr. Zekhan, his crystalline form now pulsing with confusion rather than fear. Lieutenant Catel worked frantically at his console, trying to make sense of the sensor readings. The energy patterns are completely unknown. It's like space itself is being folded and manipulated by some kind of technology we've never encountered before. From the heart of the distortion, a shadow began to emerge. At first, it was just a dark shape moving through the chaotic energy, but as it broke through into normal space, the true scale of what was happening became clear. The TSS Indomitable materialized from the dimensional rift like a predator emerging from deep water. The Terran battleship was unlike anything the gathered aliens had ever seen. Where most spacecraft in the galaxy favored smooth curves and organic lines, this vessel was all angles and purpose. Its hull was matte black composite material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, marked with scars and burns that told the story of a ship that had seen real combat and survived. The Terran response. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the TSS Indomitable, his weathered hands gripping the command chair's armrests as he surveyed the tactical display. 43 years of service in the Terran Space Force had prepared him for many things, but the sight before him still made his jaw clench with controlled fury. 412 Zephyrian warships surrounding a defenseless research station filled with civilians was exactly the kind of scenario that made his trigger finger itch. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had fought in 3 major conflicts and lived to tell about it. "Phase shift jump completed successfully, Captain," reported Chief Engineer Sarah O'Brien from her position at the engineering station. Her Irish accent carried a note of satisfaction as she monitored the exotic matter containment systems that made their impossible journey possible. "All systems are operating within normal parameters. The experimental jump drive performed flawlessly." "Tactical assessment, Rodriguez," Chen ordered, turning to his weapons officer. Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez had been studying the enemy formation since the moment they arrived. His fingers danced across holographic displays that showed weapon signatures, shield configurations, and formation patterns. 412 Zephyrian vessels, Captain. Standard hegemony battle fleet configuration. They're positioned for total bombardment of the research station. Multiple dreadnoughts, heavy cruisers, and destroyer escorts. Estimated combined firepower could level a small moon. Chen nodded grimly. The odds were staggering, but the Terran Space Force hadn't survived 3 centuries of conflict by backing down from impossible situations. "Communications, open a channel to the Zephyrian Fleet Commander." The main screen flickered to life, showing Commander Vexloth's reptilian features. His expression shifted from confident cruelty to confused anger as he took in the sight of the human bridge crew. "What is this? Another primitive species come to die alongside the researchers." "This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran Space Force," Chen replied, his voice calm and professional. "You are in violation of Galactic Convention Article 12 regarding the protection of civilian research facilities. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences." Vexloth's laughter echoed through the bridge speakers. "One pathetic human ship against my entire battle fleet. Your species achieved faster than light travel barely 2 centuries ago. You build your vessels from scrap metal and naive dreams of glory." Chen's expression didn't change, but Rodriguez noticed the slight tightening around his captain's eyes that preceded bad news for enemy forces. "I'm transmitting the coordinates for your withdrawal route. You have 10 minutes to begin your departure." "Impossible," Vexloth snarled. "No single ship can stand against the might of the hegemony. I will reduce your pathetic craft to atoms and then proceed with the destruction of the research station." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Chen turned to his tactical officer with a slight smile that his crew had learned to recognize as extremely dangerous for enemy forces. Rodriguez, show them what human engineering can accomplish when properly motivated. The Indomitable's weapon systems were the result of decades of human innovation, combined with materials and technologies that other species considered impossible to manufacture. Where alien civilizations relied on energy weapons and plasma cannons, humans had perfected the art of accelerating solid matter to impossible velocities. The ship's main guns were electromagnetic railguns capable of firing tungsten projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Targeting their command ship's weapon systems, Rodriguez reported, his hands moving across controls that responded to neural interfaces as much as physical touch. Projectile velocity calculated at 30% of light speed. Impact in 15 seconds. The first salvo fired without sound or visible energy discharge. Small tungsten rods accelerated through magnetic fields that generated more power than most planetary defense grids. The Zephyrian shields, designed to deflect plasma and energy weapons, offered no protection against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. Commander Vexloth was in the middle of ordering his fleet to attack when his flagship's main weapons array simply vanished in a shower of metal fragments. The kinetic energy of the human projectiles converted to heat and light, creating explosions that lit up the void like newborn stars. Secondary detonations rippled through the ship's hull as weapon systems overloaded and power conduits ruptured. Impossible. Vexloth screamed over the communication channel. They're using primitive kinetic weapons. How are they penetrating our shields? Chief Engineer O'Brien monitored the battle from her position in the Indomitable's engineering section. Around her, artificial intelligence systems processed combat data faster than biological minds could comprehend. The ship's quantum computers analyzed enemy shield configurations, weapon signatures, and formation patterns, then adapted human tactics in real time. Their shield harmonics are predictable. The AI reported in a voice that sounded almost human. Standard hegemony defensive protocols optimized for energy weapon attacks. Kinetic barriers are minimal. Then let's give them a lesson in human innovation, O'Brien replied, her fingers dancing across control surfaces that looked more like musical instruments than military hardware. The Indomitable began to move, and its method of propulsion defied everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about space combat. Instead of conventional engines, the human ship used controlled gravitational manipulation to fold space around itself. It would disappear from one location and reappear thousands of kilometers away without traveling the distance between. Captain Chen watched the tactical display as his ship danced through the enemy formation like a ghost. The Zephyrians were trying to target something that existed in multiple locations simultaneously, their weapon systems unable to lock onto a vessel that bent space and time around itself. Target their shield generators, Chen ordered. Disable, don't destroy. We're here to protect lives, not end them unnecessarily. Rodriguez nodded and began selecting targets with surgical precision. The Indomitable's weapons were designed for maximum accuracy rather than raw destructive power. Each tungsten projectile was guided by its own microcomputer, capable of adjusting trajectory mid-flight to compensate for enemy evasive maneuvers. The second salvo struck 12 different Zephyrian vessels simultaneously. Shield generators exploded in brilliant flashes as kinetic energy overwhelmed their protective fields. Weapon arrays crumpled like paper as relativistic projectiles punched through armor plating that had never been breached in battle. Their formation is breaking down, Rodriguez reported with satisfaction. Multiple ships reporting critical damage to weapon systems. They're trying to reform into defensive clusters. Captain Chen studied the tactical display, his tactical mind processing the flow of battle like a chess master considering his next move. The Zephyrians were regrouping, but their formation showed confusion and fear rather than military precision. Centuries of easy conquest had left them unprepared for an enemy that fought back with superior technology and tactics. Open a channel to all Zephyrian vessels, Chen commanded. His image appeared on screens throughout the enemy fleet, showing a middle-aged human with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much conflict. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Zephyrian Fleet, this is your final warning. You are outmatched and outgunned. Withdraw immediately, or we will be forced to disable your entire force. The choice is yours. Commander Vexloth's response came through gritted teeth, his reptilian features twisted with rage and disbelief. One ship cannot defeat 400. This is some kind of trick or illusion. No tricks, Chen replied calmly. Just human determination and superior technology. You have 5 minutes to begin your withdrawal. The Zephyrian commander's pride overrode his tactical sense. All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel. Destroy it at any cost. The result was devastating for the hegemony forces. 200 remaining ships opened fire simultaneously, filling the void with enough energy to vaporize a small asteroid. But the Indomitable was no longer where their weapons struck. The human ship had phase shifted to a position directly behind the enemy command vessel, its weapons already locking onto critical systems. The third salvo was the most precise yet. Tungsten projectiles struck with mathematical precision, disabling shield generators, weapon systems, and propulsion units across the entire Zephyrian formation. Ships that had terrorized countless worlds found themselves floating helplessly in space, their weapons offline and their shields collapsed. Captain Chen's voice filled the communication channels one final time. Commander Vexloth, your fleet is disabled. Your ships are at our mercy. Will you withdraw peacefully, or shall we demonstrate what happens when humans are forced to use lethal force? The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of life support systems and the distant explosions of overloaded Zephyrian equipment. On Arcturus Station, thousands of beings from 12 different species pressed against observation windows, watching in stunned amazement as a single human ship had neutralized the most feared military force in their sector of the galaxy. Ambassador Thektar activated the station's communication system, his voice trembling with emotions that his translation implant couldn't properly convey. Captain Chen, this is Ambassador Thektar of Arcturus Research Station. On behalf of 15,000 beings from 12 worlds, we thank you for our lives. Chen's response was simple and direct. No thanks necessary, Ambassador. Protecting innocent lives is what we do. Commander Vexloth's final transmission was filled with defeat and confusion. This is impossible. One primitive ship cannot defeat the entire hegemony fleet. What kind of monsters are you humans? Captain Chen's smile was visible on screens throughout both fleets. We're not monsters, Commander. We're just humans who refuse to let bullies hurt innocent people. Remember that the next time you consider attacking civilians. The Zephyrian fleet began its withdrawal 30 minutes later, their disabled ships limping toward the edge of the system under minimal power. Word of their defeat would spread throughout the galaxy within days, carrying the news that humanity had announced its presence on a galactic stage in a way that no one would soon forget. As the last enemy ship disappeared into hyperspace, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of Arcturus Station, watching the TFS Indomitable prepare for its own departure. The human ship had changed everything with its arrival, demonstrating that sometimes the most unlikely heroes emerge from the most unexpected places. The story of the day a single human warship defeated 400 Zephyrian vessels would be told throughout the galaxy for generations, but Elena knew that the real victory wasn't in the battle itself. It was in the proof that different species could stand together against those who would harm the innocent, and that sometimes the smallest acts of courage could change the course of history itself.